The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the small apartment. The maid's daughter sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at her mother lying weakly under the thin blanket. Her mother had been sick for days, coughing often, her face pale and eyes heavy. The girl's heart ached, but she knew she had no time to waste. Today was important. Today was the day her mother was supposed to attend the meeting at the office of the wealthy businessman, the one who could change their lives. But with her mother too ill to go, the responsibility had fallen on her young shoulders. She had never been inside such a place before, and the thought of walking into the office of someone so powerful made her stomach twist in knots. Her mother, noticing her worried expression, tried to smile softly. "You can do this," she whispered, her voice weak but full of trust. "Just tell them what you know. Be honest. That's all that matters." The girl nodded, swallowing hard, feeling the weight of her mother's words. She had grown up helping her mother with small tasks, learning how to be responsible, but this was different. This was a test unlike any she had faced. She dressed carefully in the cleanest clothes they owned, simple but neat, and tied her hair back so it would not distract her from the task ahead. The streets were already busy, with people rushing to work, their footsteps echoing off the walls of the narrow lanes. The girl held her small bag tightly, filled with papers and notes her mother had prepared, every piece of information carefully written down. Her heart raced with each step as she approached the towering building, its glass windows reflecting the bright morning sun. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. The building seemed enormous, almost intimidating, but she reminded herself that she was there for a reason. As she walked through the revolving doors, the smell of polished marble and faint perfume filled the air. Receptionists and assistants passed by, their eyes flicking toward her, some with mild curiosity, some with polite indifference. She felt small and out of place, but she held her head high and moved forward, clutching her bag tightly against her chest. The elevator ride was silent, and the hum of the machinery seemed louder than anything else. Her thoughts raced. What if she said something wrong? What if the businessman didn't take her seriously? She shook her head, trying to push away the fear. She had her mother's notes, and she had her own courage. That had to be enough. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into a corridor lined with expensive artwork and polished floors that reflected her own nervous expression. She was led by a young assistant who seemed impatient but polite, who told her to wait in a comfortable chair until the businessman was ready. The girl sat down, her hands folded in her lap, glancing around at the room. Everything felt surreal, almost like a dream. She could hear the muffled sound of voices from behind a large door, but she focused on her breathing, reminding herself to stay calm. Minutes felt like hours. Every time the door opened slightly, she jumped, thinking it was her turn, but it was always someone else. She looked down at her notes, reviewing them quietly, whispering the important points to herself so she would not forget. Her mother's instructions echoed in her mind. Be honest, be confident, and speak with clarity. She nodded to herself, trying to build courage. The world she had known was small and familiar, but this place was huge and unknown, and yet, here she was, ready to step into it. Finally, the door opened wider, and a tall man with a commanding presence stepped out. He was impeccably dressed, with an aura of authority that made her stomach flutter. His eyes scanned the room quickly before resting on her. She felt his gaze, sharp and discerning, as if he were reading her thoughts. For a moment, she froze, unsure of what to do. But then she remembered her mother's words and straightened her back, lifting her chin just slightly. She was no longer just a young girl. She was a representative of her family's hopes. He motioned for her to enter, and she walked through the doorway, her steps cautious but steady. The room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows letting in sunlight that glinted off polished surfaces and expensive furniture. The businessman gestured to a chair, and she sat down, trying not to fidget. He studied her for a moment in silence, then asked the first question. Her voice was soft but clear as she answered, recounting what her mother had instructed her to say. She spoke carefully, making sure every detail was correct. As she talked, she noticed a subtle change in the man's expression. His stern look softened slightly, and he leaned forward, listening more intently. Despite her nervousness, she began to feel a small spark of confidence. Each word she spoke seemed to carry weight, and she realized that she was being taken seriously. Her mother's preparation had been thorough, and now it was paying off. She explained the situation at home, the challenges her mother had faced, and the points her mother wanted the businessman to understand. She didn't exaggerate or plead. She simply spoke honestly and with heart. It was her truth, and that made it powerful. The businessman asked more questions, and she answered them as best she could, sometimes pausing to recall the exact details from her notes. Each time, she saw a flicker of approval in his eyes. She was not just a child in this room. She was someone who could represent her family with dignity. The fear that had gripped her earlier began to fade, replaced with determination. She wanted to make her mother proud, to show that even in a world of wealth and power, honesty and courage could hold their own. Hours seemed to pass in what felt like minutes. The meeting, which she had feared would be impossible to survive, was unfolding in a way she had never imagined. The businessman asked questions she could answer, and when she could not, she admitted honestly that she did not know and offered to find the information. Her sincerity impressed him. The girl realized that this was more than just a meeting. It was a chance to prove herself and her family's worth without needing to pretend to be someone she was not. When the meeting finally ended, the businessman stood and nodded at her, a gesture that made her heart swell. She felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had walked into a place where she didn't belong and had spoken her truth, and it had been enough. She gathered her notes, thanked the staff, and left the room, her steps lighter than when she had arrived. Outside, the sun was higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the city streets. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the morning lift slightly. Her mother had trusted her, and she had not let her down. As she made her way back home, she thought about what had happened. The experience had been frightening, but it had also shown her something important. Courage and honesty could open doors, even ones that seemed impossible to enter. She knew the day was far from over and that challenges still awaited her family, but she also knew that she had faced one of the biggest tests of her life and had come through it. That knowledge filled her with a quiet strength, a reminder that no matter how small she felt in a world of power and wealth, she had a voice that mattered, and she had used it well. After leaving the office, the maid's daughter felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. She had faced the towering presence of the businessman and had delivered her message with honesty and care, yet she could not help but wonder what would happen next. The streets outside were bustling with people, all seemingly in their own world. But for her, time felt slower, as if the moments she had spent in the office had changed something deep inside her. She walked carefully, clutching her bag, replaying every question and answer in her mind, trying to see where she might have faltered and where she had done well. As she reached the small park near her apartment, she noticed children playing, their laughter bright and carefree. For a moment, she envied their freedom, their innocence. She sat on a bench, her thoughts drifting to her mother, who must be resting at home, exhausted from illness but proud of her. The girl closed her eyes, imagining her mother's gentle smile, the warmth in her voice when she had said, "You can do this." That simple encouragement had carried her through the morning, more than anything else. She felt a surge of determination. She had stepped into a world she had never known, and she had survived. More than that, she had spoken with truth and it had mattered. She decided to take a small detour on her way home, walking through a quiet street lined with tiny shops and cafes. The smell of fresh bread and brewing coffee filled the air, comforting in its simplicity. Life was so different here from the grandeur of the office, yet both worlds felt connected in a strange way. She thought about the people she had passed on the street that morning, the assistants who had glanced at her curiously, and the receptionist who had barely looked up. In that moment, she realized that everyone, no matter their position, was part of a larger story, and she had become part of a story much bigger than her own. When she arrived home, her mother was sitting by the window, wrapped in a soft shawl, her face still pale but brighter than it had been in the morning. She looked at her daughter with a mixture of concern and pride. "How did it go?" she asked softly, her voice a little hoarse. The girl took a deep breath and recounted the meeting, carefully describing each question and answer, each moment that had surprised her or made her nervous. Her mother listened intently, her eyes shining with gratitude and admiration. "You were brave," she said finally. "I knew you could do it. I am proud of you." The girl smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that she had never felt before. Her mother's faith had given her courage, and now she realized that courage had grown inside her, stronger than fear. That evening, the girl sat by the small kitchen table, reviewing the notes her mother had left, thinking about the future. She knew that the businessman was powerful and that his decisions could affect her family's life in ways she could not fully understand yet. She wondered if he had noticed her sincerity, if he had seen beyond her small, quiet appearance to the determination and honesty that she carried. The thought made her both anxious and hopeful. She understood that change did not happen overnight, but sometimes, a single act of courage could begin a ripple that spread far and wide. Days passed, and the routine of life returned to the small apartment. Her mother rested and regained some strength, and the girl continued her small chores, attending to her family with love and diligence. Yet, the memory of the office and the businessman's watchful eyes lingered in her mind. She often found herself imagining what he might be thinking, whether he would call again, and how her family's life might shift because of her visit. The uncertainty was both terrifying and exciting. She learned to wait patiently, understanding that some things in life could not be rushed, and that patience was part of courage too. Then, one morning, a letter arrived at their modest apartment. The envelope was thick and elegant, unlike anything the girl had seen before. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her mother leaning over her shoulder, eyes wide with anticipation. The letter was from the businessman's office, inviting her to a second meeting. He wanted to see her again, he wrote, to discuss more details about the matters she had introduced in the first meeting. The girl's heart leapt. This was unexpected. It meant that her honesty and courage had made an impression, and now an opportunity had opened for her family. As she prepared for the second meeting, the girl felt a mixture of nerves and determination. This time, she would not only represent her mother but also herself. She realized that the businessman had seen something in her, something real and valuable. She spent hours reviewing her notes, making sure she understood every detail, every fact that might come up. She practiced speaking clearly, imagining herself in the office, answering questions with confidence. The preparation calmed her, turning anxiety into readiness. On the day of the second meeting, the girl stepped into the office again, her heart racing but her steps steady. The businessman was already there, reviewing papers, his expression serious but not unkind. When he saw her, he gestured for her to sit, and this time the atmosphere was slightly different. There was a sense of familiarity now, a recognition that she belonged there, at least in purpose if not in background. She answered his questions with confidence, her voice stronger than before, her presence more assured. Each answer, each explanation, showed her intelligence, her honesty, and her ability to handle responsibility. During the meeting, the businessman asked about her family, showing genuine curiosity. She spoke carefully, sharing their struggles, the small joys, and the hard work they did each day. She did not exaggerate, she did not beg, but she told the truth with sincerity. The man listened attentively, occasionally nodding, sometimes pausing to make notes. It was clear he was considering her words deeply. The girl realized that this moment was different from the first. Now, she was not just delivering information, she was connecting, showing her character and values in a way that could not be ignored. After the meeting, as she left the office, the girl felt a strange mixture of relief and excitement. She knew that something important had shifted, though she did not yet know how it would manifest. The businessman had seen her courage, her honesty, and the reality of her family's life. He had listened to her not just as a messenger, but as a person. That realization filled her with a quiet pride. She had stepped into a world that once seemed impossible, and she had left a mark without needing to change who she was. Back at home, she shared the events of the meeting with her mother, who listened with shining eyes and a full heart. "You are stronger than you know," her mother said, her hand resting gently on her daughter's. "Remember, honesty and courage are always noticed. Sometimes the world only needs a single person to speak the truth for everything to change." The girl nodded, feeling the truth in her mother's words. She understood now that life was full of challenges, but that facing them with integrity could open doors that once seemed locked forever. She went to bed that night with a heart full of hope, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the courage she had found within herself was just the beginning. The girl woke up early the next morning, the soft light of dawn spilling into their small apartment. Her mother was resting peacefully, and for a moment, she watched her, feeling a wave of love and gratitude. She knew that today could bring a turning point in their lives, a moment that might change everything. The letter from the businessman's office had given her hope, and now it was up to her to show the same courage and honesty that had carried her through the first meeting. She prepared herself carefully, choosing the simplest, neatest outfit they owned. Her hands trembled slightly as she tied her hair back, but her mind was focused. She reviewed the notes one last time, making sure she remembered every detail, every fact that might come up in conversation. She wanted to speak with confidence, not just for herself, but for her mother, who had trusted her to carry the family's message. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself that she was not alone. She carried her mother's strength and love within her. The streets were already alive with people hurrying to work, their footsteps echoing in rhythm with the city's pulse. She walked steadily, each step bringing her closer to the office that had seemed so intimidating just days ago. Yet now she felt a strange sense of familiarity. The tall building, the revolving doors, the polished floors, they were no longer entirely foreign. She was entering not just a place of business, but a world she had begun to understand. The thought both excited and scared her, but she kept moving forward, determined to face whatever awaited inside. Upon arrival, the receptionist greeted her with a nod, recognizing her from the previous visit. The assistant who led her to the waiting area seemed slightly surprised but polite. The girl sat down, clutching her notes, her fingers tracing the edges of the papers. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining her mother smiling, feeling that quiet reassurance that had given her courage before. The minutes dragged, each one stretching long and tense, but she remained patient. She knew that patience was part of courage, and she was ready to prove herself once more. Finally, the door to the office opened, and the businessman appeared. His expression was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. He gestured for her to enter, and she walked in, holding her head high despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. The office seemed just as grand as before, yet now it felt like a place where she had already made her presence known. She took the seat across from him, trying to steady her breathing, feeling the weight of the moment press down gently. The meeting began with questions about the family's situation and the details she had shared previously. She answered confidently, recalling facts and explaining her mother's points clearly. As the conversation progressed, the businessman asked questions that went deeper, ones that required more thought and reflection. She paused at times, considering her words carefully, never rushing, never faltering in honesty. She realized that he was not simply testing her knowledge. He was testing her character. Each answer, each explanation carried more weight than she had expected. He asked her about her own life, her experiences, and what she had learned from her family's struggles. She spoke honestly, telling him about the long days she spent helping her mother, the challenges of managing a household with limited resources, and the small victories that made their lives meaningful. Her words were simple, but they were genuine, filled with emotion and integrity. The businessman listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes, occasionally pausing to ask a thoughtful question. She could sense that he was beginning to understand the depth of her character, the resilience that lay beneath her quiet exterior. During the discussion, she noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The initial formality and distance seemed to soften. The businessman, who had appeared intimidating and untouchable, now engaged with her in a manner that felt almost personal. He asked about her mother's health, about her hopes for the future, and about the values that guided her family. Each question was an opportunity for her to show not just knowledge, but sincerity, and she responded with honesty, careful not to exaggerate or embellish. Her words were her own, yet they carried the weight of her mother's guidance and the strength of her own heart. As the meeting continued, she realized that she was learning as much as she was speaking. The businessman shared insights about his work, about the decisions he faced, and about the responsibilities that came with power. She listened closely, absorbing his words, understanding that this world was complex, but also that integrity and honesty could navigate it. She found herself asking thoughtful questions, not out of pretense, but out of genuine curiosity and desire to understand. Each exchange built a connection, a bridge of respect and understanding between them. Hours passed in what felt like moments. The businessman's demeanor remained serious but now carried a subtle warmth, a recognition of her courage and intelligence. He asked her to clarify certain points, to expand on her mother's ideas, and to offer suggestions. She responded thoughtfully, drawing from her experiences and the lessons she had learned from her family. The room, once a place of intimidation, now felt like a space where dialogue and understanding could flourish. She realized that the meeting was no longer just about her mother's request. It was about mutual respect, about seeing value beyond appearances and titles. Toward the end of the meeting, the businessman leaned back in his chair and regarded her with a steady gaze. He asked her a question that caught her off guard, one that required her to think deeply about her family, her values, and the future she envisioned. She paused, reflecting carefully, and then spoke from the heart. Her answer was simple but profound, carrying the weight of her experiences and the clarity of her intentions. The businessman listened quietly, nodding slowly, a faint smile appearing on his face for the first time. It was a small gesture, but to her it felt monumental. When the meeting concluded, he stood and extended a hand. She took it, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. He spoke briefly, his words measured but kind, acknowledging her honesty, her courage, and the insight she had shown. She thanked him sincerely, realizing that this was more than a formality. It was recognition of her character and potential. As she left the office, she felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced before. She had faced a world that once seemed unreachable and had left a mark without pretending to be someone she was not. Outside, the city continued its busy rhythm, but she moved through it with a new sense of confidence. Each step felt lighter, each breath more meaningful. She thought about her mother, imagining the pride that must be shining in her eyes. She realized that the courage she had found within herself was not just for this meeting, but for every challenge that lay ahead. She had learned that honesty, preparation, and a steadfast heart could open doors and change the way others saw her. When she returned home, her mother greeted her with a warm smile and a gentle hug. She shared the details of the meeting, carefully recounting the questions and the responses, the subtle gestures that had meant so much, and the moments when she felt most proud. Her mother listened with eyes shining, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement and love. "You have shown strength beyond your years," she said softly. "Remember, what you have done today is not just for us, but for yourself too. You are capable of more than you know." The girl nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle deep within her. She understood now that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That night, as she lay in bed, the girl reflected on everything that had happened. She had walked into a world of wealth and power, faced intimidation, and emerged with dignity and respect. She had learned that sincerity and preparation could overcome fear, and that even someone small and seemingly insignificant could be noticed when speaking truth with courage. Her thoughts drifted to the future, to the possibilities that lay ahead, and she felt a quiet hope that tomorrow could bring even greater change. She closed her eyes with a sense of fulfillment, ready to face the next chapter, knowing that the journey had only just begun. The next few days were filled with anticipation and quiet preparation. The maid's daughter found herself thinking constantly about the meetings, about the businessman, and about the possibilities that had begun to unfold. She spent her time helping her mother recover, completing chores, and reviewing her notes repeatedly. Each review was a chance to reinforce her confidence and ensure that she was ready for whatever came next. The small apartment seemed brighter these days, as if hope itself had entered with the letter inviting her back. She felt a sense of responsibility heavier than ever, but it was paired with a newfound courage she had discovered in herself. When the day of the next meeting arrived, the girl rose early, her heart beating with a mix of excitement and nerves. She prepared herself carefully, as she always did, making sure her appearance was neat and presentable. She packed her bag with notes, just in case, and took a moment to collect herself before stepping out into the streets. The morning air was crisp, and the city hummed with its usual energy, yet she felt a calmness beneath the surface of her nerves. She reminded herself that she was ready, that she had faced challenges before, and that today was another opportunity to show who she truly was. The office felt more familiar as she entered, though it still carried an air of grandeur that made her pulse quicken. The receptionist greeted her with a polite smile, and the assistant led her to the waiting area. This time, she noticed details she had not before. The subtle scent of flowers, the careful arrangement of furniture, the paintings on the walls. She sat quietly, taking in the surroundings and focusing on her breathing. Moments passed slowly, each one a test of patience and composure. She reviewed her notes again, quietly whispering reminders to herself, but also thinking about the conversation she would have with the businessman. She wanted to be prepared, but she also knew that honesty and sincerity were more important than perfection. Finally, the door opened, and the businessman stepped out. His expression was composed, but his eyes carried a subtle curiosity. He gestured for her to enter, and she walked in, feeling both nervous and empowered. The office felt different today. There was a sense of expectation, a feeling that this meeting could lead to something important. She took her seat, her hands folded calmly in her lap, and waited as he began the conversation. The questions started as before, about her mother's work, the family situation, and the details she had presented in earlier meetings. She answered clearly and confidently, drawing from her previous experiences and the careful notes she had prepared. As the discussion progressed, the businessman asked questions that were more thoughtful and challenging. He wanted to understand not just the facts, but the person behind them. She spoke honestly, sharing her own perspective, her observations, and the small lessons she had learned from her family's struggles. Her answers were simple, but they carried a depth that came from real-life experience. She realized that he was not testing her knowledge alone. He was testing her judgment, her character, and her ability to respond with integrity. Each answer she gave was a reflection of the values her mother had instilled in her: honesty, responsibility, and resilience. The businessman's demeanor softened as the meeting continued. He asked about her personal goals, her thoughts about the future, and how she envisioned helping her family. She answered thoughtfully, explaining how much her mother's guidance had shaped her, and how she hoped to continue supporting her family in meaningful ways. She did not speak of wealth or status. She spoke of kindness, effort, and the importance of staying true to oneself. The businessman listened, occasionally nodding, showing a level of respect and interest that the girl had not expected. She felt seen, not for her background or her appearance, but for the honesty and courage she carried. During the meeting, there were moments of reflection and silence, where the businessman seemed to consider her words carefully. She realized that this was more than a formal conversation. It was a connection being built, a recognition of her character and her potential. She felt a sense of empowerment, understanding that her voice mattered and that her perspective was valued. The room, once intimidating, now felt like a space of mutual respect, where honesty could bridge gaps that status and wealth could not. She continued to answer questions with sincerity, careful thought, and a calm confidence that had grown steadily since her first visit. As the hours passed, the conversation began to shift. The businessman shared insights about his work, his challenges, and the importance of integrity in every decision. She listened attentively, absorbing the lessons being offered while also contributing her own observations. Her mother's teachings echoed in her mind. Every interaction is an opportunity to show truth and strength. She realized that she was doing more than representing her mother. She was representing herself, her values, and the courage she had cultivated. Each response she gave reflected not just knowledge, but the resilience and intelligence she had developed through her life experiences. The businessman then asked her a question that required reflection and honesty. How she envisioned making a difference, both for her family and for others around her. She paused, considering her answer carefully, then spoke with clarity and thoughtfulness. She described how small acts of honesty, hard work, and kindness could create change, how dedication to family and community could ripple outward in ways that mattered. She did not claim to have all the answers, but her sincerity shone through, and the businessman listened with an intensity that made her feel truly heard. Toward the end of the meeting, the businessman leaned back and regarded her with a thoughtful expression. There was a moment of silence, where she wondered if she had said enough, if she had made the right impression. Then he spoke, his words measured but warm, acknowledging her honesty, her insight, and the strength of character she had displayed. She felt a wave of relief mixed with pride. This was not just recognition of a job well done. It was an acknowledgement of who she was, of her courage, and of the values that had guided her life. When the meeting concluded, she stood, feeling a mixture of anticipation and gratitude. The businessman offered a small smile, a gesture that conveyed both respect and encouragement. She thanked him sincerely, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. As she walked out of the office and into the streets, the sun shone brightly, reflecting her sense of accomplishment. Each step felt lighter, each breath more meaningful, as she carried with her the understanding that courage, honesty, and resilience could truly open doors. Back at home, she recounted every detail to her mother, who listened with shining eyes and a heart full of pride. Her mother held her hand gently, offering words of love and reassurance. "You have shown strength beyond your years," she said softly. "Remember, honesty and courage are always noticed, and today you have proven that with your own heart." The girl nodded, feeling the truth in those words resonate deeply within her. She understood now that her journey was more than a series of meetings. It was a process of growth, discovery, and the quiet power of integrity. That night, as she lay in bed, she reflected on the events of the day. She had faced challenges, navigated uncertainty, and spoken with honesty in a world that often valued appearances over character. She realized that the courage she had discovered within herself was a gift that would carry her through many trials ahead. She felt a quiet hope, a belief that her actions, grounded in truth and integrity, could create opportunities and bring positive change to her family's life. As sleep came, she knew that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with possibility, guided by the strength and values that had always been within her. The day of the final meeting arrived, and the maid's daughter felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement that she had never experienced before. Her mother, looking healthier now, gave her a gentle smile and words of encouragement that warmed her heart. "Remember, just be yourself," her mother said softly. "You have done so well already. Trust yourself." She nodded, feeling the truth in her mother's words. Today was the moment that could truly change their lives, and she was ready to face it with the courage and honesty she had cultivated over the past weeks. As she walked through the bustling streets toward the tall building, she felt a sense of familiarity mingled with anticipation. The towering structure, once intimidating, now seemed like a place where she had already proven herself. She carried her bag tightly, containing her notes, although she knew she would not need them as much today. The city around her moved quickly, but she felt a calm determination beneath the nervous energy in her chest. She had learned how to face challenges, how to speak with truth, and how to hold herself with dignity, even in the presence of someone so powerful. Upon arriving at the office, the receptionist greeted her with a polite nod, and the assistant led her to the waiting area. The girl took a seat and glanced around, noticing the details of the room she had observed before. The flowers, the polished floors, the paintings on the walls. Everything seemed both familiar and grand, a reminder of the world she had begun to enter through courage and honesty. She reviewed her thoughts quietly, thinking about what she would say, how she could speak sincerely, and how she could show the depth of her understanding and her care for her family's situation. Finally, the door opened, and the businessman stepped out, his expression calm but attentive. He gestured for her to come in, and she walked forward with steady steps, her heart beating in rhythm with her confidence. The office, with its grandeur and elegance, felt like a stage, yet she no longer felt small or intimidated. She was here to speak truth, to represent her family with integrity, and to show that courage and sincerity mattered as much as wealth or status. She took her seat, her hands resting calmly in her lap, ready to engage fully in the conversation. The businessman began by reviewing the matters discussed in previous meetings, asking for updates and clarifications. She answered clearly and confidently, explaining the progress and details with precision. Each answer reflected the care and thought she had put into understanding her mother's work and her family's needs. She realized that this meeting was not just about delivering information. It was about building trust, demonstrating reliability, and showing that she could carry responsibility with honesty and grace. The businessman listened intently, nodding at certain points, showing a level of engagement that gave her a quiet reassurance. As the discussion moved forward, the businessman began to ask questions that delved deeper into her values, her perspective, and her ability to think critically. She responded thoughtfully, reflecting on her experiences, the lessons learned from her mother, and the understanding she had gained from her own observations of the world. Her answers were simple but meaningful, demonstrating that she could see beyond immediate problems to the larger picture, and that she approached challenges with care and integrity. The businessman's attention was fully on her, a subtle acknowledgement that he was recognizing the depth of her character. At one point, he asked her about her hopes for the future, both for herself and for her family. She spoke honestly, describing the small but important ways she hoped to support her mother, improve their life, and contribute positively to the lives of those around her. She did not exaggerate or claim knowledge she did not possess. Instead, she spoke from her heart, with clarity and sincerity. The businessman seemed impressed, leaning back slightly and giving her a moment of thoughtful silence. In that pause, she realized that her honesty and courage had left a strong impression. The conversation shifted naturally, and the businessman began sharing insights about his own work and the responsibilities he carried. He spoke about the importance of character, the value of hard work, and the need for integrity in all decisions. She listened attentively, absorbing his words while also contributing her own reflections. She spoke of what she had learned from her family, about empathy, diligence, and resilience. Each exchange built a bridge of understanding between them, a recognition that true worth was measured not by wealth or status, but by honesty, courage, and the willingness to act with integrity. Then came the moment that changed everything. The businessman paused, looking at her with a thoughtful expression, and asked how she envisioned making a difference, not only for her family but for the community around her. She took a deep breath, reflecting on the lessons her mother had taught her about kindness, honesty, and perseverance. She spoke with clarity and conviction, explaining that small acts of courage and integrity could ripple outward, creating opportunities for growth and positive change. She did not speak of grandeur or wealth. She spoke of human values, of helping others, and of the importance of staying true to oneself. Her words, simple yet profound, seemed to resonate deeply. The businessman remained silent for a moment, absorbing what she had said. Then he smiled, a genuine warm smile that seemed to light up the room. He reached for a document and slid it across the desk toward her. It was an offer, a chance for her family to benefit from his support and guidance. The girl's eyes widened, her heart racing as she read the words. She felt a mixture of shock, gratitude, and overwhelming relief. This was more than she had ever imagined. Her courage, honesty, and sincerity had opened a door that had once seemed impossible to enter. She looked up at him, tears threatening to spill, and thanked him sincerely. The businessman nodded, acknowledging her words, and offered reassurance. "You have shown strength, integrity, and intelligence beyond your years," he said. "It is clear that your family has raised someone truly remarkable. I believe in supporting those who demonstrate true character." Her heart swelled with emotion, and she realized that this was a moment that would forever change the trajectory of their lives. Leaving the office, she felt light, as if the weight of uncertainty and fear had been lifted. The streets outside seemed brighter, more alive, and every sound felt amplified with possibility. She walked with a sense of accomplishment and hope, imagining how her mother would react, how their lives could improve, and the doors that honesty and courage could open. She understood now that success was not simply about wealth or status, but about integrity, bravery, and the willingness to face challenges with a steadfast heart. When she returned home, she rushed to her mother, sharing the incredible news. Her mother embraced her tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. "You have proven that courage and honesty can change the world." The girl held her mother close, feeling the warmth of love and pride fill her chest. In that moment, she realized that the journey had not only strengthened her character, but had also reinforced the bonds of family and the power of trust. Over the following days, the family began to see the changes unfold. Support from the businessman allowed them to improve their living conditions, access better opportunities, and plan for a brighter future. Yet, beyond the tangible benefits, the girl carried a sense of empowerment and confidence that would guide her for the rest of her life. She had learned that even a small person, with honesty, courage, and determination, could influence the world in meaningful ways. As the sun set one evening, she sat by the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From the fear and uncertainty of stepping into the office for the first time, to the courage and honesty she had shown in each meeting, she realized that her actions had been more than a representation of her family. They had been a testament to the strength of human character. She smiled softly, understanding that life was full of challenges, but that facing them with truth and courage could lead to moments of transformation and hope. Her mother joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember this feeling," she said. "This is the reward of integrity, perseverance, and love. You have shown the world and yourself what truly matters." The girl nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced fear, embraced responsibility, and spoken with honesty. And in doing so, she had changed the course of her family's life forever. She knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, opportunity, and the quiet power of integrity. And as the night settled over their home, she felt ready to face whatever the future might bring, carrying the lessons of courage, honesty, and resilience in her heart.